Let's look at how we can bring back tag history for a few tags on a table, but allow the user to filter for a specific start date and end date. So here I have a table on my window that I can bind to tag history, but I need a way for the user to select a start date and end date. So for that, I'm going to use a calendar component. I'm going to go over here to my component palette. Under calendar, I can take the date range component and put it onto my window. This is a great component because it has both a start date and end date built into it. So with this, a user in the runtime can actually change this slider, make it bigger, smaller to select a different start date and end date. And there's two properties here on the left hand side, start date, end date, that we're going to use in binding. Now it's important here that by default we're actually going to select 2 days worth of data. As you can see right now, there's 2 days selected. And sometimes when you're bringing back tag history, especially if you're doing a natural sample size and you're logging data every 10 seconds, you're going to have a lot of rows of data that you're going to put in your table. So what I typically do here is set the startup mode to be a smaller time period. So over here under behavior, there is the startup range and the startup selection. Startup range, I'm going to set this to 4 hours. And the startup selection, I'm going to set to 10 minutes. So you can just kind of type that in. The max selection is the max number of time that they're allowed to select in that date range component. So this is a startup, so I do have to close the window and reopen it for it to see it change here. So I'm going to go up here to my window, right click and close and commit, and then reopen it. Now you'll see that only 10 minutes are selected. I'm showing the last 4 hours here on the date range picker. Now that I've got that set up, I can go down to my table and I can bind the data property of the table to tag history. So I'm going to go up here to tag history and select the tags I want to look at. So I'm going to say these 5 ramp tags here. I'm going to drag them over to the right hand side. I can change the column names, move them up, move them down. But now, down here at the bottom, we can specify the date range here. So it's going to be set to historical. The start date, end date here. As you can see on both of these, there's a link icon to the right hand side, which allows us to link that to a property on the window. In my case, I want to link the start date to a property. I'm going to go in my window and select the date range as start date. On the end date, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to bind that to the date range as end date. So now whatever the user picks, it's going to bring it into this binding here. I'm going to bring back the natural sample size, a wide format, min-max aggregation mode, and typically you want the polling here to be off because the user can change the start date, end date, which will go and get the new data, bring it back, but just do it once. So I'm going to go ahead and press OK. Now I can see the data in my table. As I move my picker here, I can select different time periods. I can make it a little bigger, a little bit smaller to select more or less data, and you can see the data set here is actually changing.